Well, evergreen agriculture is all about growing trees on farmers' fields along with their food crops. And it's a way of doing agriculture that has the potential to actually reinvent farming in the future. Right now, here in Africa, millions of farmers are growing fertilizer trees along with their food crops in such a way that they produce higher yields while they have their crops growing under a canopy of trees. It's a very interesting, very unusual system, but it's indigenous to Africa. And the trees that make this system possible are trees that are readily available to millions more farmers in the future. So we look at evergreen agriculture as a way of, in fact, assisting in reinventing agriculture for a more climate-smart farming in the future. There's been a tremendous amount of research on the effects of fertilizer trees on crop yields in various countries in Africa, which has helped us to understand why so many millions of farmers already use these trees in their fields. They cultivate them in their fields for fertilizer and fodder. And the yields vary from place to place and from system to system. But in general, the increase in yields may be as much as double or triple the yields that are obtained without the canopy of trees in the fields. This is because the trees produce nitrogen fertilizer. They fix nitrogen from the air, and their biomass, their leaves, are deposited on the soil surface, and the soils become more fertile. And this stimulates higher crop yields of maize, sorghum, millets, and other cereal crops in various countries around the region. The World Agroforestry Center is working with countries throughout Africa in developing national programs that would scale up the use of these tree technologies in farmers' fields. That way, more farmers can benefit from the knowledge and the technologies that have been developed by African farmers, studied by scientists, and now are available at a mass scale for propagation. The environmental benefits are accompanying the productivity benefits, and they include increased biodiversity in farmers' fields. Because imagine if you had a lot of trees in a farm, you will increase the number of niches for birds, for rodents, for insects, and other forms of life in the farm, instead of it being a monoculture of a single crop. So it increases the biodiversity, but it also helps farmers to adapt their farming systems to climate change, because the soils being improved, they help increase yields when there is a drought, when there is less moisture. The crops will still do better than they would have done without the trees. This is one of the big benefits we see for the future, because in most parts of Africa it's predicted that the climate will get drier and hotter, and producing your crops in association with trees will help to buffer the crops from those stresses from drought and high temperatures. We have a lot more research to do in order to understand the adaptation of the systems to crops in countries where they are not very commonly used. So a lot more investigation needs to be done to create a broader recommendation for the technology. But there certainly are a lot of areas where farmers are already using these systems, and that they can be intensified by propagating more trees, increasing the density of the trees in farmers' fields. So in the medium term, we can see a very vast proportion of farmlands in Africa potentially using these trees in order to buffer their crop yields from these higher temperatures and drought situations. the vision that the World Agroforestry Center is developing is a vision whereby much of our crops in the tropics in future years will be produced under the canopy of a agroforest, under the canopy of trees whose branches spread over the fields, but yet do not compete with the crops. Quite the contrary, will in fact improve the environment for crop yields and help African farmers to dramatically increase their crop production, even in the event that they cannot afford to use commercial fertilizer. Well, we are now working with partners in countries throughout West, East, and Southern Africa and in South Asia to develop and extend the systems of evergreen agriculture. And these partners include governments, our research institute partners, the universities, the NGOs, the private sector, and of course donors who are interested in supporting these efforts so that we can carry forward this work in an accelerated way. So we have many, many partners developing their support for and engagement with the prospect of a movement to encourage the development and use of evergreen agriculture throughout the tropics.